Our guest today is Miss Theodore, who has served Castro Valley School Board for 6 years. Thank you for speaking with me, Miss Theodore. For the first question, what are the next steps we should take regarding COVID?
When you say next steps, do you mean with the school district or in general?
I think as like a society as a whole, but I also think because with school, I think as school oriented.
Okay. Well, for the purposes of school, I think the most important thing is to start planning for full in-person instruction next year. Um, there's been so much work, that went into getting kids back to school this year and making sure that all of that was done safely. And I think that needs to continue to bring all of our students in all together for robust in-person instruction. On a broader level, I think we need to focus on vaccine distribution. It's going really great, but we're plateauing. So messaging needs to continue to get people in the door and shots in arms. And then we need to start thinking about booster shots, right? So they said at the beginning that they believe that these vaccines are effective for about 6 months. So for a lot of people that got their first dose in December or January, 6 months is around the corner. So that's another thing that we need to start thinking about. And I think a huge thing that we all need to think about is planning for supporting people with their mental health. There's been a lot of trauma that we've all experienced during the pandemic, and we continue to experience. So putting things in place in our schools, not in schools, for people to access support in working through the trauma.
How can the government encourage people to take the COVID-19 vaccine?
That's a really good question. One of the things, I work in public health, and one of the things that we talked a lot about in the early days of rolling out the vaccine is vaccine hesitancy. And that's a real thing. But we've seen that with messaging and taking vaccines to places where people are, meeting people where they are, that some of that hurdle has been overcome. So now there's vaccine resistance, and that's a real thing. But I don't think those are the only barriers to people accessing vaccines. There's also, there's this last mile. People talk about the last mile, getting to those really hard to reach people who are homebound, people who don't have homes. So I think it's important to think about everyone when we're talking about vaccine rollout, not just the people who can schedule the appointments online and get in the door, but the people who don't have that capacity. So how do we reach all the people who want vaccines? And I think as long as we continue to put the message out there in a positive way, people will start coming aboard with those people who are hesitant to get the vaccine.
The next question is, what has President Biden done in office that you think is significant?
I think the vaccine rollout has been a really big thing because the pandemic looms large in all of our minds. So all of those things that his administration has put into place, the manufacturing, the distribution, having the personnel to do the distribution, because that's a big thing. I don't know if you've seen the mega pod at the Coliseum, but getting all of those people there to smoothly get people in their cars through the lines and with the shots in arms and all of that documented, that's a big thing. So allocating those resources for vaccine distribution has been big. The other thing has been really looking at the minors who are being held at detention centers at the border, immigration detention centers, and how that the number of minors in detention centers has been reduced significantly since he took office. So that's another big thing that I think he's done.
What would you like to see President Biden do next?
I think continuing to focus on immigration is important, but also stronger legislation or support around voter rights. I think that's a big, scary thing that is happening right now with suppression of voter rights. So I think for Biden to put some effort into supporting voter rights and supporting people who want to expand voter rights versus the people who want to suppress them.
What did you think about the Derek Chauvin verdict?
What do I think about the verdict? Well, of course, I believed that he was guilty of murder, and I was glad to see that the jury also thought so. I don't think that means that the issue of police brutality is solved, or that we suddenly have a just criminal justice system. I think it's a good place to start. And I think it has brought to the forefront the injustice in our system. And I hope that it has made a lot of people pay attention and will continue that movement going forward.
What do you think should happen next concerning civil rights movement?
Let's see. Well, I think the two biggest issues right now that are sort of in the forefront of the media is voting rights and also transgender rights. So the things that the next steps, or what I think should happen, is again a stronger stance on supporting voter rights and expanding those, as well as doing something to stop states from stopping services to trans people.
What do you think about the Governor Newsom recall effort happening right now?
Frankly, it makes me nervous. I think that California, and therefore Governor Newsom, has been a nemesis to the previous president and that president's supporters. So there are deep financial pockets that support the recall. And so that makes me nervous. I think Governor Newsom has made some mistakes in how he's handled the shelter-in-place order in his personal life, and that's hurt him. So not only are Republicans unhappy with his response, but it didn't look good. And I know there are Democrats who are also, not happy with how he's handled things. So with the ability for deep financing to support the recall, it does make me nervous.
How do you think the recall will turn out?
Well, I mean, of course, I hope the recall is shut down by voters. Newsom did win by a landslide when he was elected, so that gives me some hope. But the fact that we've really suffered through this pandemic, and that people were so disappointed with how he has led California, that there were enough signatures for this recall, does concern me. So I don't know. I am hopeful that the recall won't pass, so that there won't be a new governor. And from what I've looked at, it looks like the areas of California that are supportive, that pushed the recall through, are traditionally Republican strongholds and not where a lot of the population in California is. So I'm hoping that it works out, in the end.
What is your opinion about the idea of tuition-free college?
Well, I totally support tuition-free college. When I think back to when I went to college in the 90s, I paid $975 a semester. It was very affordable. And if you sort of translate that in today's money, that's probably around $2,000, maybe $2,200. And that's something that a student who's working over the summer can save up for and pay their tuition. You know, that's $2,200 is way more affordable than, you know, the going rate at Fresno State, where I graduated from, is now, I think, $6,500 a semester. So, you know, the cost of school has outpaced the cost of inflation. So it's gone up so much. And the spending, the federal spending and state spending hasn't been prioritized for education. I think that if our legislators prioritize education and move funds from other places that there's a lot of spending, like military spending or law enforcement spending, and focus that on education, then we can have, you know, tuition-free college in our public universities.
And the last and final question, what are you most proud of achieving in office?
Gosh, when I saw your question, I was thinking, it took me a bit of thinking, but the Wellness Center is the thing that I think I'm the most proud of. When I was elected, we didn't have a Wellness Center. And I was on the Wellness Committee, which at the time was looking at establishing a school-based health center with the support of Kaiser. The Kaiser Foundation was going to give the school district some money to open a school-based health center. Well, it wasn't working out to be able to provide those sorts of health services. So, and at the same time, the school district received a large grant from the federal government to grow our mental health and behavioral health services in the district. So instead of focusing on a school-based health center, the Wellness Committee decided to focus on creating a wellness center. You know, there were already some mental health services in the school district, but there was no place to house them. So, you know, a lot of times counselors were meeting with students in an empty classroom or in a space that really wasn't designed for mental health well-being. So the idea of being able to create a space that was dedicated to our students' well-being was important. And I'm glad to have been able to be on that committee and have the desire myself to make sure that this went through.
I believe that is all now. Thank you for taking your time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been Josie Torre from the Castro Valley Olympian.